This is Africa in 1945. And here it is again today. You're probably wondering, how did we get here? Following the end of World War II and the defeat of the Axis, 193 countries sent delegates to a conference in San Francisco for drafting the United Nations Charter.
At no time in history has there been a more important conference or a more necessary meeting than this one in San Francisco.
In Article 1, the member states agreed to respect the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, which set forth a wave of decolonialization across the globe. The future of Africa at the time of the conference, however, wasn't entirely clear.
Although we in America can understand the Africans' resentment against outside domination, we cannot help but worry whether the newly independent nations, who have virtually no preparation for independence, can make a go of it. Given the demand of quick and efficient development, what will happen to traditional safeguards for political and social democracy, for example?
The people of Africa are moving toward independence. When people are seeking freedom, they're always impatient, and I think that's good.
Nearly 15 years after the United Nations Charter was ratified, the colonial powers continued to struggle and keep hold of their empires as more and more subjects demanded their independence. The French Empire tried to establish a unified French community that would be solidified in the new 1958 Constitution. However, pressured with conflict in Algeria and Indochina, France frantically searched for a solution to the growing wave of independence movements across their colonies on the African continent. Enter Léopold Sédar Senghor. A poet, teacher, and statesman, Senghor served as a representative for Senegal in French Parliament. He would eventually become the first president of his country. Senghor was extremely concerned with the relationship between the French satellites and both metropolitan France and other newly independent nations on the African continent. He asserts in his essay, West Africa and Evolution, that a federation with the French, as the former empire hoped to achieve, would be impossible. History, he argues, has many examples, among them the United States, the Soviet Union, and Germany, to prove that a federation is really possible only between states that are at equal economic levels and have equal political maturity. While he believed in this unity, Senghor did not believe that Pan-African unity could happen overnight. As various states became independent, both before and during 1960, quarrels began to arise between and within the newly born nations. Several African states began to try and control other newly independent ones, such as with Sudan, who tried to use methods borrowed from totalitarian regimes to colonize Senegal. Senghor also believed that the economies and political establishments of African nations were not compatible with each other. He argued that a Pan-African movement was paradoxical. Nations who had just achieved independence would not immediately want to be ruled under a collective united front. If a collective unity did form on the African continent, it would be decades later. Regardless, Senghor was extremely hopeful for the future of the African continent and the nations within it. He strongly believed in the power of the people, their spirit, their hard work, and their belief in creating new systems for themselves and the generations to come. Senghor acknowledged the struggles and limitations that would face Senegal and other African nations. These nations, who were trying to establish economies, democratic systems, and strong relations with each other, would eventually reach their goals and enter the world stage on their own terms.
Il s'agit de vivre notre négritude aujourd'hui, Inc. et nous, n'est-ce pas, dans cette seconde partie du XXe siècle. Il s'agit donc, enracinés dans nos valeurs propres des civilisations, de nous ouvrir aux valeurs complémentaires à la modernité, à l'esprit de rationalisme.